Welcome to another episode of Chit-chat with Kat, where we dive into deep conversations and laugh until we pee our pants. It's called Balance, people. Today, I'm by myself and I'm going to be answering a few questions that people have asked about my mental health journey or mental health in general since my first podcast that I released. What's funny is I have been on the verge of a panic attack for the past half hour and I'm home alone, so I was you know what, let's just do this right now and hopefully it'll distract me. So I put up a little ask me a question thing on my Instagram story, and I was actually pleasantly surprised that some of my friends actually reached out and asked a few questions, because I know that this topic makes people uncomfortable, and a lot of my friends don't really ever ask me about my anxiety, which is totally fine because I know that it can be weird for them to talk about or try to understand or even have any interest in. Before I answer any questions, I just want to say I am not a doctor, therapist, or any sort of medical professional. I am just someone who has gone through this for years and really lived and gone through this whole process and the numerous doctor visits, the specialist visits, the tests that include MRIs, x-rays, ultrasounds, EEGs, EMGs, you name it. I've probably gone through it. And yeah, I just really want to share my experience. So the first question is, at what point did you realize these things about your mental health - needed to seek further help? Understandably, mental health in Asian American families seem a bit taboo. Not to speak for everyone, but I feel like in general, a lot of feelings are suppressed and pushed to the side. Ooh, girl, let's get into this. Majority of my fellow Asian Americans can probably relate when I say that when you have normal levels of anxiety, stress, or unhappiness in your life, you kind of just have to keep that to yourself and deal with it. Stressed about a test? Shut up and study. That's kind of how we're taught in typical Asian American families growing up. I think that is why I never even could have considered that I had depression and anxiety as a kid and all throughout my teenage years, even when it got past the normal levels of sadness and worry, because it was never talked about in our family, so that those words weren't even in my vocabulary. I kind of touched on this in the first episode of this podcast, but it's a little hard for me to answer when I realized I had mental health issues, only because I think it shows that I thought I needed help when I reached out to my parents about my stomach pains that suddenly came on a lot stronger than usual. And then when I kept going to the two doctors in college at San Diego because the symptoms were affecting my life so significantly. But because I never actually received a diagnosis all these years, I never knew what exactly I needed help for. So I guess in a way I realized these feelings since I started telling doctors, but not really. And the first time I knew I needed to seek further help, I'd say, was when I went to the Women's Center at UCSD to seek therapy because of my depression, where I was crying every day. And I think that was partially because of all the symptoms I was going through, but I was also just tired of being kind of a Debbie Downer or a negative Nancy or whatever else you want to call it of my own life. I never really showed it to my friends or projected my sadness, I guess, onto them, so I really was just bringing myself down when I was alone. Because of all the years I had to hold this in because I couldn't feel like I could talk to my parents about it, as an Asian American, it is kind of in our nature to just learn to bottle things up. And I'd say that when I had to go to the hospital because of that panic attack, that was my bottle exploding. And for me, it was a really difficult process to figure out how to explain this to my parents. After the whole hospital incident, this actually pushed me to sit down with my parents and really talk to them for the first time and not be afraid to share my feelings. And I tried to explain to them what anxiety, oh my gosh. Sorry, I'm still trying to calm my panic attack. I tried to explain to them what an anxiety disorder was and how I can't really control the panic attacks and the anxiety, especially in the beginning because I just started experiencing these really scary panic attacks. And they were patient a little in the beginning because I think they were scared when they saw my panic attacks. They were just really confused what was happening to my mind, my body, and just it's a really scary thing to watch someone go through. They kind of just with time thought, she's gonna be fine, it's over. And they think that this is something so easily curable. But whenever I would have panic attacks or anxiety and like I didn't want to leave the house later to like go to family dinners or something, they would sometimes start getting impatient and frustrated. And I totally get why, because they didn't understand it well, but it was just starting to frustrate me. And then they would always throw these cures at me. You know how Asian parents are, like, drink this tea, take this Asian medication, it's gonna take it all away. After a while, I was like, you know what? I'm already so stressed from this anxiety. Like, I don't need the extra stress of trying to help my parents understand it. And it helped me a lot when I realized, you know what, just accept them for the way they are and the way they think. And it's not their fault that they grew up not being able to understand and talk to me the way that I want them to. And I'm like not angry at them at all, because that actually helped me learn to deal with this on my own rather than always trying to find someone to save me. My advice would be, though, for anyone like in an Asian American family or someone who maybe feels like they can't talk to their families, to at least try. You can't be disappointed if you have no expectations. And so if they do something nice, like be understanding and let me skip dinner if I really feel like I can't leave the house, then they exceeded my expectations because they did something that showed they supported me and understood me. And in those moments, I am very, very grateful. So it's all like you kind of have to talk to yourself and see what you need. And if you don't need the support from them and you can deal with it alone, then great. And if you have an amazing support system at home, then great. It's really what works for you. But I feel good knowing that I sat them down for the first time and actually told them how I felt, and I tried. So they can do what they want with that. I hope I answered the question. Moving on to the next question is, how do you deal with panic attacks? So for me, in the beginning, when I first started experiencing them, I honestly didn't know how to deal with it at all. I was genuinely always thinking I was dying, to the point where I was crying every single time it happened, and I couldn't sleep at all. So I tried, the coloring books, reading a book, trying to walk around outside for some fresh air, even at like 2 a.m. in the morning, or I would stick my face to my window of my bedroom and try to get some fresh air. I tried a lot of different things, like the fidget cube too, and it just doesn't help because I was so overly anxious in the beginning because I didn't know how to handle anything at all. And then now, I like to say, I think everyone with anxiety disorders, panic disorders, and like chronic illness and all these things in general, with time, you become an expert of your own illness. And you really learn what works for you. So when I'm at home and I'm like really anxious, I can feel when the anxiety is going to turn to a panic attack soon. And how I deal with that is I try to distract myself by working, because when I work, I am very into my work. And most of the time I'm freaking out as I'm working, but then eventually like an hour later, I'll realize, okay, it's kind of gone. But I'm not always that lucky. My home is my safe place, especially my room. So I have a lot of anxiety and panic attacks in my room alone. And in those moments, I'm always thinking I'm gonna die. And like sometimes I'll be pacing around because I'm like checking if my face is turning pale. And then I feel like I'm gonna pass out. And I kind of just let myself freak out and get really, really scared because I really don't know what else to do but to let it pass. And that's how I deal with panic attacks at home. I freak out in my room all by myself. And those are very scary moments, but each time I get through it. As my therapist said, the only way to get through it is to let yourself go through it. What I've learned works for me is to turn on the TV and watch YouTube, because seeing like real people just chilling, talking, vlogging, or like podcasts, that kind of like distracts me as I'm freaking out. And yeah, as I said, like with time, I know it'll pass, but in those moments, it's still very scary and I'm always thinking I'm gonna die. Yeah, that's just how I deal with panic attacks in my home. But when I'm out with friends and not in my safe place, it's a lot scarier because it's really bad. I've kind of turned my room into like the only place I want to have panic attacks in. I've gotten to the point now where I've had solid friend groups for years, so I know exactly how to handle my anxiety with different friend groups. And when I'm with my close groups of girlfriends, I know what friend I can go tell in that group that I'm having a panic attack. And the weird thing about me is I only want to tell my friends, hey, I'm a little anxious right now, or hey, I'm having a panic attack right now. And then I end it there because to me, just saying it to someone and having someone know makes me feel so much safer already. And I think that's because if I ever feel like I'm losing balance when I'm walking or something, I can just like hold on to their arm and they don't mind at all. And they know why I'm doing that. It's because I'm anxious. And I always tell them, like, I don't need you to do anything. I just need you to hear me say, I'm anxious or I'm having a panic attack because I just need someone to know. When you let your friends know what you need, it's a lot easier for them to help you. So the thing is, I get anxiety and like small panic attacks all the time when I'm with my friends, and they don't even notice when they're sitting next to me. But that's because I've learned to hide it so well, and I'll like freak out inside and like get all sweaty and hot, and they don't notice. I think that's like the burden complex speaking, because I never want to be a burden on someone or feel like they have to ruin their time and like take care of me. And so I will still be panicking and freaking out and like sweating profusely and blanking out when they talk. Even after I tell them I have a panic attack and I feel a little safer, I still get all the feelings of a panic attack, but I just don't want them to have to take care of me, and I don't want to make everyone like have their attention on me because I hate attention. And that's how I deal with it when I'm out. So what I say is, if I don't say anything, then I'm anxious. If I say something, then I'm really anxious, because most of the time when I'm out, I'm anxious. And for me to actually say something, that is when I'm hitting a rare point where I feel like I genuinely can't handle this alone. And I feel like I've gotten to the point where I can handle a lot alone because I deal with it by myself so much. When I have them and I'm out alone, that is probably the scariest for me, because there have been multiple times where I've had to always drive on like the right side of the freeway so that I'm close to exits, because I've been really anxious that drive or that day in general. And there's been a few times where I actually had to like get out of the closest exit and stop my car somewhere in like random neighborhoods or like plazas, just so I can let myself slowly catch my breath, because I feel like I was suffocating in my car. For stores and things, if I go to places I've already been to, like I know where the exits are, and I'll allow myself to leave if I need to, because I don't really care if people are staring at me. I need to get out. And then like if I go to new places, sometimes if I feel like I'm gonna be really anxious that night, I'm gonna look it up on Yelp or something and try to see where the doors and things are, just so I can prepare myself, and that makes me feel better. Even though I know that's probably bad, because I feel like I'm enabling like my constant fight or flight response or whatever. I don't know. But it helps me. And yeah, with everything, my panic attacks, indoors, outdoors, wherever, it doesn't really get better or easier necessarily. But with time, like I said, you get used to it, always feeling like this, and you kind of just figure out what works for you. And then you kind of develop a routine so you know what to do when you have a panic attack in different places. Another question I actually get frequently asked is, am I on medication for this? And the answer is no, because when I was first diagnosed, I was given so many different anxiety medications to try, and each time you have to take it for like a few weeks or a few months, and they never worked for me, or I had really bad side effects from it. And then when a medication did work for me, I found myself getting very dependent on it, and that was very scary. So then I stopped cold turkey and didn't tell my doctor, which was very bad. Please don't do that. If you ever need to get off your meds, you are supposed to talk to your doctor so they can wean you off it slowly. And I remember I was shaking and like having so much anxiety, I passed out in a movie theater. I mean, like fallen asleep, not actually fainted. Well, I really don't know. I just remember waking up all of a sudden in a movie theater and I was like, what just happened? But that was the few days after I stopped the medication cold turkey. And after that, I was like, okay, I never want to feel like I'm like kind of addicted or like dependent on a medication again. And then I have a lot of other problems that came from this anxiety disorder and also my fibromyalgia. And so there was a point where I was on like 4 medications, or more a day. And I just felt so robotic because everything, all my meals and everything had to revolve around the medication. And I hated it. I just felt like I'm living to take medication. I'm not living for me. I also had very severe reactions to a couple medications that really scarred me, and now I'm like really scared to try new meds. So it's just not for me, and I'd rather just do the therapy and other ways of managing this. But I know a lot of people online that I've read their stories, and medication helps them a lot. So it's to each their own, you know? I am so excited to answer this next question because, oh my gosh, it's just okay. Here, the question is, what do you hate being asked about when it comes to your anxiety disorder? I know for a fact that so many people going through this hate this question along with me because people always ask this one question: have you tried dot 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 whenever you tell them you have anxiety? I know people are coming from a good place and like have good intentions and they really just want to help when they ask this question. But especially when you've dealt with this for so long and someone new just comes and goes, have you tried this? Dot, dot, dot. You're like, yeah, I've pretty much like tried everything, but you can't say that to their face and like be mean. So then I kind of just entertain what they have to say and let them just get it all out because I know that even if I said, yes, I have, they're going to keep going and throwing a bunch of things that I can try that they think will help me because it helped their like older mom who has like arthritis or something. Yes, that has happened to me before. She said that vitamins her mom took for arthritis could cure my anxiety. And yeah, I took those vitamins before, and guess what? I ain't cured. I sound so mean, but I swear I'm not. It's just a very frustrating question because people think it's such a simple fix. And it's like you never even ask for their advice. You just sometimes feel like you have to tell them you have anxiety because it comes up. And you just want to end the conversation there unless they're going to ask you, relevant questions. But then they like to just tell me what they think I should do to fix it. The last question is, if it could disappear tomorrow, would you want it to? I think about this all the time actually. I'd say yes because it'd give me my life back and allow me to live the rest of my 20s like I should be able to. I feel like I lost a lot of my 20s where you're supposed to travel and like go do a bunch of fun things with friends because I was always so anxious that I can't even really get on a plane for long. When I used to fly all the time back and forth from San Diego to San Jose when I was in college, but now that even scares me. But I'm extremely grateful for going through this since childhood because since I was young and having to hide all these emotions I was feeling, I learned to be kind to people because you don't really know what they're going through. And I've always been a really hard empath to the point where I actually had a therapy session to help me be less empathetic because it was interfering with my life that badly. It's so crazy. But anyways, I was going through that has made me even more empathetic and just, I guess, an overall better person, I hope, and friend, because I really try to put myself in other people's shoes when they go through things, and I just really want to be there for them because I didn't really have that growing up. And whenever my family or friends are going through things, I actually really enjoy researching more about their conditions or their situations so I can better understand how to be there for them. But I feel like that's also my PTSD and like hypochondria making me extra nervous for everyone whenever they go through something. But yeah, anyways, I would say yes, I want it to disappear if it could because it's affected, I think, like my bubbly personality. Like I just blank out sometimes when I'm with friends suddenly, and the second before that I could have been laughing and having the best time, and then suddenly anxiety decides to strike and join the conversation. So then I shut down and I find it hard to focus on conversations because I'm focusing on not running out to the nearest exit, and that's even if people are here in my own home. I get really anxious sometimes and I just want to like leave my house. I feel like I learned a lot from going through all this, but I definitely wish it could go away sometimes just so I can have like a normal life back. I really miss what life used to be like before this constant anxiety and panic attacks. I think that's the hardest thing to go through. It's just knowing life wasn't always this crazy and this like scary. And I really miss just being me. But I'ma just keep trying to live a fun life the best way I can. And thanks for listening and peace out, y'all.